500 guests. 500 people watched my mother-in-law grab the microphone and call my father garbage. Human trash, who didn't deserve to breathe the same air as the Whitmore family. And not a single soul stood up. Not one. Including the man I was about to call my husband. I saw my father's hands tremble. The same hands that worked 3 jobs to put me through college. The same hands that held mine at my mother's funeral when I was 6 years old. And Jonathan, my fiancé, the love of my life, he just chuckled. But what happened next would bring a billion-dollar empire to its knees. I'm Daisy Frost, 28 years old, and this is the story of my wedding day. The day I lost a fiancé, but found something I'd been missing my entire life. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you are watching from. To understand how I ended up standing in front of 500 people watching my world collapse, I need to take you back 18 months. To the night I first stepped into the Whitmore universe and realized I would never truly belong. The Whitmore estate sat on Beacon Hill like a crown jewel, all brick and ivy and old money elegance. Jonathan had warned me his family was traditional, which I'd later learn was code for something else entirely. Eleanor Whitmore met us at the door in head-to-toe Chanel, her smile practiced to perfection. She looked me up and down, my Target dress, my drugstore lipstick, and I watched something flicker behind her eyes. "So you're the girl," she said. Not a question. Dinner was Dover sole and passive aggression. Halfway through the second course, Eleanor turned to me with that smile that never reached her eyes. "Jonathan tells me you're an architect of some kind. Landscapes, was it?" She paused, swirling her wine. "So you plant trees?" "I design public spaces, actually. My last project was a $4.7 million urban renewal contract with the city." Eleanor's laugh tinkled like broken glass. "How charming! Harold, remember the Miller Estate Gardens? They hired someone like that, too." Someone like that. 3 words that would define the next 18 months of my life. Jonathan squeezed my hand under the table. "Mom just needs time," he whispered. I believed him. Then Victoria, Jonathan's 26-year-old sister, pulled out her phone with theatrical innocence. "Daisy, I just Googled your address. Dorchester?" She looked around the table with wide eyes. "Oh, that's interesting." The table fell silent, and Jonathan said nothing. That was the first sign I should have run. My father raised me alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in Dorchester. Marcus Frost, 58 years old, quiet as morning fog, steady as a heartbeat. He worked as an independent consultant, though I never asked exactly what that meant. He traveled often, sometimes for weeks, but always came home with the same worn flannel shirts and that gentle smile that made everything feel okay. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich either. Dad drove a 2008 Ford F-150 with rust spots on the bumper. He clipped coupons. He told me money couldn't buy the things that mattered. I believed him about that too. Eleanor refused to meet my father for 14 months. "My schedule," she'd say. "Perhaps when things are more settled." The excuses piled up like autumn leaves. When the meeting finally happened, 2 months before the wedding, it lasted exactly 47 minutes. Eleanor looked at my father's calloused hands, his department store khakis, his quiet dignity. Then she turned to me and said, "Well, now I understand why you never mention your family." Dad just smiled and asked about her garden. On the way out, Jonathan realized he'd forgotten his wallet. Dad reached into his pocket to pay for the coffee, and that's when I saw it. A flash of silver. Some kind of card with initials I didn't recognize. FCP, Executive Board Access. "What's that?" I asked. Dad tucked it away so fast I almost missed the movement. "Nothing important, sweetheart. Just work." Later that night, he called me. "Daisy, I hope Jonathan loves you for who you are, not for what people think you're worth." I didn't understand what he meant. Not then, but I would. 3 weeks before the wedding, Eleanor invited me for tea. Just the 2 of us. Woman to woman. The Whitmore sitting room smelled like lilies and judgment. Eleanor poured Earl Grey into bone china cups, while I waited for whatever blade she was about to slip between my ribs. Daisy, dear. She set down the teapot with careful precision. I've been thinking about the guest list. 500 people. Business associates, politicians, the cream of Boston society. It's going to be beautiful, I said carefully. It could be. She paused. If we address one small issue. My stomach tightened. Which is? Your father. The words hung in the air like smoke. I'm prepared to transfer $50,000 to your personal account, Eleanor continued, her voice smooth as silk. All I ask is that Marcus not attend. We can tell people he's ill. A heart condition, perhaps. Very tragic, very private. I set down my teacup before I threw it. You want me to pay my father to disappear from my wedding? I want to protect your special day. Her smile didn't waver. Think about it, Daisy. 500 guests seeing him in his Walmart suit, sitting there like what, Eleanor? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. I stood up so fast my chair scraped the floor. Jonathan appeared in the doorway. Of course he'd been listening, and grabbed my arm. Baby, please. She didn't mean it like that. 3 hours of arguing later, we reached a compromise. My father could attend, but he would sit at table 47, the back of the room, near the service entrance. I agreed because I loved Jonathan, because I thought love was enough. It wasn't. The night before my wedding, I couldn't sleep. The bridal suite at the Whitmore Grand Hotel was bigger than my childhood apartment. Everything was white and gold and perfect, and I felt like a stranger in my own life. My phone buzzed at 11:14 p.m. Dad. Hey, sweetheart. His voice was warm, familiar, the sound of home. Couldn't sleep either? Nervous, I guess. That's normal. He paused, and I heard something in the silence. Something heavy. Daisy, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Okay. Are you happy? The question hit me like cold water. I opened my mouth to say yes. Of course, yes. I was marrying into one of Boston's wealthiest families. I had a 3-carat diamond on my finger. I had everything. But the word wouldn't come. I think so. You think so? Not accusation, just observation. Dad, it's complicated. Jonathan's family is a lot, but he loves me. Another pause. Daisy, I've been meaning to tell you something. About who I am. About what I actually do. I heard him exhale. But it can wait until after the wedding. Tonight isn't about me. What do you mean, who you are? Nothing, sweetheart. Just, I want you to know that I'll always be here, no matter what happens tomorrow, no matter what anyone says about me or about where we come from. His voice cracked slightly. You are the most precious thing in my life. I cried then, quietly, so he wouldn't hear. I love you, Dad. I love you too, Daisy. More than you know. He hung up. And I spent the rest of the night wondering what secret my father had been carrying all these years. I would find out soon enough. June 15th, 2024, my wedding day. I woke at 6 a.m. to the sound of hairstylists and makeup artists invading my suite. The Vera Wang gown, $45,000 of silk and lace, hung by the window like a promise. Melissa, my best friend and maid of honor, handed me coffee while someone attacked my hair with a curling iron. You ready for this? She asked. I've been ready for 2 years. She didn't look convinced. Melissa had never liked Jonathan. Too polished, she said. Too perfect. But she'd kept her opinions to herself because that's what best friends do. Daisy. She lowered her voice, pulling me toward the bathroom. I need to tell you something. Now? I'm getting married in 6 hours. That's why now. She glanced at the closed door. Last night I went to the hotel bar. Victoria was there with some of her Instagram friends. She was drunk and loud and what? She said something about today, about your father. Melissa's jaw tightened. She said, "Wait until you see what Mom has planned. That old man won't know what hit him." My blood went cold. What does that mean? I don't know. But Daisy, whatever Eleanor is planning. The bathroom door burst open. Victoria stood there in a pink silk robe, phone in hand, smile sharp as glass. "There you are! Mom's looking for you! Photo time, bride-to-be!" She grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the door, her grip tighter than necessary. "Today is going to be so memorable, Daisy. Trust me." Something in her voice made my stomach drop, but I smiled and followed her anyway. Because what else could I do? Trinity Church in Back Bay had hosted Whitmore weddings for 3 generations. Stained glass windows cast rainbow shadows across 500 guests as I walked down the aisle on shaking legs. I spotted my father immediately. Third row from the back, left side, wedged between people I didn't recognize. He wore his best suit, a navy blue from JCPenney that he'd probably owned for 15 years, and his eyes were shining with pride. Eleanor stood in the front row, radiant in Dior, her smile perfect for the cameras. When our eyes met, she nodded once, slowly, like a queen acknowledging a commoner. Jonathan waited at the altar, golden and handsome and everything I thought I wanted. When I reached him, he took my hands and mouthed, "You're beautiful." I tried to feel happy. I tried to feel anything except the dread coiling in my stomach. Pastor Bennett read the vows. Jonathan said, "I do." I said, "I do." We exchanged rings, his grandmother's platinum band, heavy on my finger like a shackle. "You may kiss the bride." Jonathan kissed me, and 500 people applauded. As we turned to face our guests, I looked toward my father again. He smiled and nodded, but there was something in his expression I couldn't read. Sadness, maybe. Or worry. Then I saw Eleanor lean toward Victoria, whispering something that made them both laugh. They were looking directly at my father's table. Victoria raised her phone, already recording. My husband of 30 seconds, didn't notice anything, but I did. And in that moment, I knew Melissa was right. Something was coming. The Whitmore Grand Ballroom was Eleanor's cathedral. 2,500 square feet of crystal chandeliers, Dutch tulips flown in overnight, a 12-piece orchestra playing Sinatra. Every detail screamed old money, from the hand-calligraphed place cards to the $17 per ounce imported caviar. 500 guests mingled beneath the gilded ceiling. 3 Massachusetts state senators, a dozen CEOs, the entire editorial board of the Boston Globe Society page. This was Eleanor's kingdom, and we were all just visitors. I searched the room for my father. Table 47 sat in the far corner, near the service entrance where waiters ferried trays of champagne. A table for 8, but only 3 seats were occupied. My father sat alone in the middle, back straight, face calm, nursing a glass of water. My heart cracked. I moved toward him, but Eleanor's manicured hand closed around my elbow. "Daisy, darling, Senator Mitchell wants to congratulate the bride." Her grip was steel wrapped in silk. "Your father is fine. He understands." I should at least say hello. Later. Not a suggestion. Jonathan appeared at my side, champagne in hand. "Babe, come meet the Harrisons. They're huge investors." "Jonathan, my dad is sitting alone." "He's an adult, Daisy. He can handle it." Jonathan was already steering me toward a cluster of designer suits. 1 hour, then we'll go say hi. Promise. 1 hour. I looked back at table 47. My father caught my eye and smiled. That same gentle, reassuring smile he'd given me my whole life. Like he was protecting me, even now. Even when I should have been protecting him. 45 minutes later, I would understand why Eleanor wanted him so far away. She needed the distance for what came next. At 7:15 p.m., the orchestra fell silent. Eleanor Whitmore ascended the stage like she was accepting an award. The spotlight found her immediately. Of course it did. She'd probably choreographed the entire thing. And 500 faces turned toward her with expectant smiles. Good evening, everyone. Her voice carried effortlessly through the ballroom, warm and gracious and completely controlled. Today is a momentous occasion for the Whitmore family. My son, Jonathan Harold Whitmore III, has chosen his bride. Applause rippled through the crowd. Jonathan squeezed my hand. Daisy is... Eleanor paused, searching for the word. Special. Something in her tone made my skin prickle. She's come so far to be here tonight, overcome so much. Another pause, longer this time. I admire her determination. Not everyone can climb from such humble beginnings to stand in a room like this. Scattered laughter. A few exchanged glances. We all know the saying, it's not where you come from, it's where you're going. Eleanor's smile widened. And Daisy is certainly going places now, thanks to my son. I felt the color rise in my cheeks. Jonathan's grip on my hand loosened slightly. From the corner of my eye, I saw Victoria raise her phone. Recording. In-laws are supposed to praise the bride, Eleanor continued, her voice dripping with sweetness. So let me just say, Daisy Frost, welcome to the family. I'm sure you'll learn our ways eventually. More laughter, louder this time. My father sat motionless at table 47, his water glass untouched. And I told myself it was fine. Just Eleanor being Eleanor, just rich people humor. But Victoria was still recording, and Eleanor wasn't done. Victoria took the stage before Eleanor even stepped down. My turn! She bounced up to the microphone in her crimson dress, blonde hair perfectly curled, influencer smile locked in place. I just have to say a few words about my new sister, the crowd cooed. I braced myself. Daisy is amazing. Really, she's taught me so much. Victoria pressed a hand to her heart. Like, I used to think you needed to be born into a certain family to belong in certain places, but Daisy proved me wrong. You can come from anywhere and still end up somewhere. I felt Jonathan shift beside me. His hand was no longer touching mine. And speaking of family, Victoria turned, scanning the room until her gaze landed on table 47. Mr. Frost, Daisy's dad, wave hello! These 500 heads swiveled toward the back corner. My father raised his hand briefly, offering a polite nod. Mr. Frost is such a character, Victoria continued, her voice carrying that practiced Instagram enthusiasm. Did you know he drove here tonight in a pickup truck? A Ford. I didn't even know they still made those. Laughter erupted, louder now, more confident. No offense, Mr. Frost. It's actually really charming, very authentic. I stood up. Jonathan, he pulled me back down. She's just joking. Relax. That's not a joke. She's humiliating him. Daisy. His voice sharpened. Don't make a scene. I looked at my father. He sat perfectly still, face unreadable, weathered hands folded on the white tablecloth. He was protecting me, again, by refusing to react. Anyway, Victoria waved at the crowd. Let's all raise a glass to the happy couple, and to Mr. Frost for, finding his way here tonight. She winked at her phone camera, and I knew the worst was yet to come. I grabbed Jonathan's arm and pulled him toward the side corridor, away from the champagne laughter and pitying glances. Did you hear what your sister just said? Jonathan loosened his tie, looking everywhere but at me. Vic's just being Vic. She didn't mean anything. She called my father a character, Jonathan. She mocked his truck in front of 500 people. It was a joke. It wasn't funny. He sighed. That long, exhausted sigh I'd heard 100 times when I complained about his family. What do you want me to do, Daisy? Storm the stage? Demand an apology in front of everyone? I want you to defend him. I want you to tell your mother and sister that my father is a human being who deserves basic respect. Your father isn't saying anything. He seems fine. Because he's protecting me. My voice cracked. He knows if he reacts, it'll make things worse for me. That's who he is. That's who you're supposed to be. Jonathan checked his watch. Checked his watch. Look, we have 3 more hours. The speeches are almost over. Just get through tonight. Honeymoon starts tomorrow. 2 weeks in Tuscany, just us. And you'll forget all of this. He straightened his jacket and turned toward the ballroom. Jonathan, he paused. If you walk away right now without saying anything to your family, I need you to understand what that means. He looked at me then, really looked, and for a moment I thought I saw something. Doubt, maybe, or guilt. Then he shrugged. You're being dramatic, Daisy. This is our wedding day. Don't ruin it. He walked away. And standing alone in that corridor, I realized the truth I'd been avoiding for 18 months. I wasn't marrying a partner. I was marrying his mother's son. I needed air. I needed my father. I slipped through a service door and found the corridor leading to the back of the ballroom. The kitchen clamor faded as I turned a corner and stopped. My father stood alone by a window, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in a voice I'd never heard before. Low, controlled, commanding. Theodore, I'm aware of the timeline. Tell the board Monday works. If they can't wait 48 hours, that's their problem, not mine. I stepped back into the shadows, heart pounding. No, don't release any statements until I've reviewed them personally. Margaret has the projections. Have her cross-reference with Q2 actuals before the call. A pause. The Singapore deal can wait. I'll be in New York by Tuesday if necessary. Board? Statements? Singapore? My father, who clipped coupons and drove a rusty pickup and lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, was talking like someone who ran things. Important things. He ended the call and turned. Our eyes met. Daisy. Something flickered across his face. Guilt? Fear? How long have you been standing there? Long enough. I stepped closer. Dad, who were you talking to? What board meeting? He slipped the phone into his pocket, his expression smoothing into the calm mask I knew so well. Just work, sweetheart. Nothing that matters tonight. Theodore? Margaret? Singapore deals? I shook my head. That doesn't sound like consulting. He reached out and took my hands. His grip was warm, steady, familiar, but his eyes held something I'd never seen before. After the wedding, he said softly, I'll explain everything. I promise. Dad, tonight isn't about me, Daisy. It's about you. He pulled me into a hug. Are you okay? No. Nothing about tonight is okay, but I just nodded against his shoulder and tried to ignore the voice screaming that I was missing something huge. We walked back towards the ballroom together, my father's arms steady around my shoulders. At the service entrance, he reached into his pocket for a handkerchief, and something silver clattered to the marble floor. I bent to pick it up. A card. Heavy platinum, expensive looking with embossed letters that caught the light. FCP. Frost Capital Partners. Below that, Executive Board Access, Marcus A. Frost. Dad, I held up the card. What is this? He took it from my hand, quickly, too quickly, and tucked it into his jacket. Nothing, just an ID badge from a company I work with. Frost Capital Partners? That has your name on it, your middle initial. Coincidence. Dad. He turned to face me, and for a moment the mask slipped. I saw exhaustion. I saw secrets. I saw 28 years of something he'd been carrying alone. Daisy, I've been wanting to tell you for a long time about who I really am, what I've built. He cupped my face in his hands. But I wanted you to grow up normal. I wanted you to find someone who loved you for you, not for what I have. What are you talking about? The service door burst open. Victoria stood there, phone recording, smile vicious. There you are. Mother's looking everywhere. Time to cut the cake, bride. She grabbed my arm before I could respond, pulling me away from my father with surprising force. We'll talk later, Dad called after me. After the wedding, I promise. I looked back as Victoria dragged me into the ballroom. My father stood alone in the corridor, that silver card still clutched in his hand, watching me go with an expression I would remember for the rest of my life. He looked like a man preparing for war. 8:00 p.m., cake cut, first dance finished, and Eleanor Whitmore claimed the microphone again. Before we continue the celebration, she announced, her voice cutting through the conversation like crystal, I have one more speech to make, something special. The orchestra stopped. Waiters froze mid-service. 500 guests turned toward the stage with the same eager attention they'd give a public execution. We've talked tonight about new beginnings, Eleanor continued, her gaze sweeping the room until it landed on table 47. But I think it's time we talked about where those beginnings come from. My heart began to pound. Mr. Frost! Her voice rang out, amplified and inescapable. Would you mind standing up? I saw my father rise slowly, gracefully, his face perfectly neutral. 500 pairs of eyes tracked the movement. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Marcus Frost, father of the bride. Eleanor paused for effect. When Jonathan first told me about Daisy, I was curious. What kind of family produces a girl like her? So I did what any concerned mother would do. Don't. Please, don't. I had someone look into Mr. Frost's background. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Victoria raised her phone higher. And do you know what I discovered? Eleanor's smile widened, predatory now, all pretense of warmth gone. Nothing, absolutely nothing remarkable. No real estate, no significant investments, no savings to speak of, no family money, no connections, no anything. I stood up. Jonathan grabbed my wrist. Daisy, don't. Ladies and gentlemen, Eleanor continued, her voice rising, this man, this independent consultant, has nothing. The ballroom fell silent, and my mother-in-law leaned into the microphone with the satisfied smile of someone about to deliver the killing blow. Do you want to know what that makes him? That's not a father, Eleanor's voice echoed through the ballroom. That's garbage. The word hit like a physical blow. Garbage. 500 guests inhaled sharply. A few laughed, nervous, uncertain laughs that died quickly. Most just stared, caught between horror and fascination. Victoria whooped from somewhere behind me. Tell them, Mom! My son is marrying the daughter of garbage, Eleanor continued, her face flushed with righteous fury. A man who couldn't even afford to buy his daughter a proper wedding dress. A man who drives a pickup truck, to an event like this. A man who should be grateful I let him through the door at all. I watched my father. He stood motionless at table 47, hands at his sides, face carved from stone. But I could see his fingers trembling, just slightly, just enough for a daughter to notice. If I had my way, he wouldn't be here at all, Eleanor spat. He should be outside with the valets, or better yet, collecting trash, since that's clearly all he's qualified to do. Laughter now. Real laughter. From people who wanted to stay in Eleanor Whitmore's good graces. From people who had probably never been called garbage in their entire privileged lives. I turned to Jonathan, my husband, the man who promised to love, honor, and protect me. He was smiling, not a pained smile, not an embarrassed smile, a genuine, amused smile, like his mother had just delivered a particularly clever joke. Then he chuckled, a soft sound, barely audible, but I heard it. My husband heard his mother call my father garbage, and he laughed. Something inside me, something that had been bending for 18 months, finally irreversibly broke. I turned to face him fully, my vision narrowing until Jonathan was the only thing I could see. Did you just laugh? His smile faltered. What? Your mother called my father garbage, and you laughed. Daisy, come on. Did you? Just laugh. Jonathan's jaw tightened. Around us, guests were starting to whisper, phones appearing like weapons. Eleanor still held the microphone, watching us with something like triumph. Look, Jonathan said, lowering his voice. Mom went too far. I'll talk to her later. But you have to admit, your father doesn't exactly fit in here. Fit in? You know what I mean. The truck, the clothes, the. He gestured vaguely. Everything. Mom's just saying what everyone's thinking. I stared at the man I'd loved for 2 years. The man I'd just married in the eyes of God and 500 witnesses. And I didn't recognize him. Jonathan, if you had any integrity, any backbone at all, you would take that microphone from your mother and apologize to my father right now. He actually recoiled. Apologize? Publicly? Do you know what that would— What it would what? Cost you? Status? Reputation? You're making this into a bigger deal than— Your mother called my father trash. Your sister mocked him for an hour. And you sat there and did nothing. Jonathan's face hardened. Maybe if your father was someone worth defending— I didn't hear the rest of the sentence, because I was already walking away, toward the stage, toward the microphone my mother-in-law still clutched like a scepter, toward the moment that would destroy my marriage and save my soul. Behind me, I heard Jonathan call my name. I didn't look back. The stage lights were blinding. I didn't remember climbing the steps. One moment I was in the crowd, the next I was reaching for the microphone in Eleanor's hand. What do you think you're— I pulled it from her grip. The feedback shrieked through the speakers and 500 people fell silent. My name is Daisy Frost. My voice cracked on my own last name. 3 hours ago, it became Daisy Whitmore. But I want everyone in this room to hear me say something. Eleanor reached for the microphone. I stepped back. You just heard this woman, my mother-in-law, call my father garbage. You heard her say he doesn't deserve to breathe the same air as the Whitmore family. I swept my gaze across the room. And not one of you said a word. Silence. Absolute crushing silence. 500 people. Business leaders, politicians, the best of Boston, supposedly. I let out a breath that was half laugh, half sob. And not one of you stood up and said, "That's wrong." Victoria's phone was still recording. I didn't care. I turned to find Jonathan pushing through the crowd, face pale. Daisy, stop. We can talk about this. Talk? I laughed. You just watched your mother humiliate my father in front of everyone you know. And you laughed. You laughed. I can explain. No. I pulled the ring from my finger, 3.5 carats of Whitmore legacy, and held it out. No more explanations, no more excuses, no more. The diamond caught the light as I dropped it into his frozen hands. I'm not Daisy Whitmore anymore, and I'm canceling this wedding. The gasp that rippled through the room was almost musical, and I wasn't done yet. If you're still watching, hit that like button and tell me, have you ever had to choose between keeping the peace and protecting someone you love? Drop a comment and let me know. And if you want to find out what happened next, trust me, you won't believe it. Subscribe and hit that bell. Because what my father did in the next 5 minutes changed everything I thought I knew about my life. The ballroom erupted. Eleanor was screaming something about lawsuits. Victoria was laughing nervously into her phone. Harold Whitmore had risen from his chair, face ashen, hands gripping the table like it was the only thing keeping him upright. And through it all, Jonathan just stood there holding his grandmother's ring, mouth opening and closing like a landed fish. Then I heard footsteps, slow, measured, deliberate. The crowd parted as my father walked through them, not rushed, not angry, each step landing with the quiet confidence of a man who had walked into 100 rooms where he didn't belong and owned every single one. When he reached the stage, the whispers died. He climbed the steps and stood beside me, placing one warm hand on my shoulder. Then he turned to face the crowd, and I saw something in his expression that I'd never seen before. Power. Eleanor. His voice was calm, almost conversational, but it carried to every corner of the ballroom without effort. You said you investigated me. Eleanor's face was mottled red and white. This is— You can't— Security. You said I have nothing. My father smiled, a small, dangerous smile I didn't recognize. And you were right. If you only looked at what I've chosen to show the world. Harold Whitmore stepped forward, suddenly alert. What are you talking about? My father turned to me. His eyes were soft, apologetic, full of all the words we'd never shared. Daisy, sweetheart, I wanted to tell you after the wedding. I wanted it to be private, just the two of us. He squeezed my shoulder. But I think the situation calls for a different approach. He turned back to the crowd. Allow me to reintroduce myself. The ballroom doors swung open. A silver-haired man in a three-piece suit strode through like he owned the building, which, I would later learn, wasn't far from the truth. He carried a black leather folder embossed with gold letters, FCP, Frost Capital Partners. I heard gasps of recognition ripple through the crowd, then whispers, urgent and confused. Is that Theodore Hayes? Hayes and Morrison? The M&A firm? What's he doing here? The man climbed the stage and nodded to my father with the familiarity of a decades-long partnership. Marcus, got your call. I brought everything. My father took the folder. Thank you, Theodore. Impeccable timing as always. Wait! Harold Whitmore's voice cracked. Theodore Hayes, I know your firm. You handle some of the biggest private equity deals on the East Coast. Theodore turned to Harold with a polite smile. That's correct, Mr. Whitmore. Although tonight I'm here in a different capacity. He gestured to my father. I'm the personal attorney and legal counsel for Mr. Marcus Frost, founder and majority partner of Frost Capital Partners. I've held this position for 25 years. The silence that followed was deafening. I stared at my father. Founder? Majority partner? Dad? My voice came out barely a whisper. What is this? He didn't answer me. Instead, he opened the folder and pulled out a document, holding it up so the first few rows could see. This, he said, is a certified asset statement from Morgan Stanley Wealth Management. It details the holdings of Frost Capital Partners, which I founded in 1992. He paused. Including our 34% ownership stake in Whitmore Hospitality Group. The room exploded. That's impossible! Eleanor's shriek cut through the chaos. We don't have an investor named Frost. Harold, tell them. Harold Whitmore had gone completely white. The 2008 investment, the anonymous equity partner who saved us during the crash. He stared at my father like he was seeing a ghost. That was you? It was. My father's voice remained perfectly level. Your company was 48 hours from bankruptcy. I offered a $200 million lifeline in exchange for a silent partnership. You accepted. But we never knew who... Because I didn't want you to know. My father turned the page in his folder. Frost Capital Partners, founded 1992. Total assets under management, $4.2 billion. We're number 47 on the Forbes list of largest private equity firms. Feel free to verify. Nathan Wells, a CEO I recognized from the business pages, rose from his chair. I've worked with Frost Capital. Their representatives never revealed the founder's identity. It was legendary in the industry. He looked at my father with new eyes. My God, it's been you this whole time. Dad! I grabbed his arm. Why didn't you tell me? He turned to me, and his eyes softened. Because I wanted you to grow up knowing that your worth had nothing to do with money. I wanted you to find someone who loved you for who you are, not for what I have. His gaze shifted to Jonathan, who was still standing frozen in the crowd. Clearly that didn't work out. Eleanor staggered backward as if she'd been struck. This is a trick. This is some kind of... Mrs. Whitmore. Theodore Hayes stepped forward, his voice crisp and professional. I have documented proof of every claim Mr. Frost has made, including the fact that the man you just called garbage owns more of your family's company than you do. Theodore produced an iPad and handed it to the nearest guest, Senator Mitchell, as it happened. This is an email confirmation from Morgan Stanley's Private Wealth Division dated yesterday, verifying Mr. Frost's portfolio. The 34% stake in Whitmore Hospitality is highlighted. He gestured toward the stunned senator. Feel free to call the number listed. They're expecting verification requests. Senator Mitchell scrolled through the document, his eyebrows climbing higher with each swipe. This is this is legitimate. The letterhead, the account numbers, the signatures. Of course it is. Theodore's voice held a hint of offense. Hayes and Morrison doesn't deal in fabrications. Another voice rose from the crowd, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a sharper suit. I'm Margaret Chen's colleague at Goldman. She mentioned Frost Capital Partners last month, said their founder was the most private billionaire in America. She turned to my father. She was talking about you? Margaret has been my managing director for 15 years, my father confirmed. She's quite protective of my privacy, or she was, until tonight. I felt the room shift. Suddenly the whispers had a different tone. Not mockery, but awe. Not contempt, but calculation. Eleanor stood frozen on the stage, her perfect makeup cracking along with her composure. Harold, do something. But Harold Whitmore wasn't looking at his wife. He was looking at my father with something very close to terror. Mr. Frost, Marcus, I had no idea. No, my father agreed. You didn't, and that was the point. He turned to face the crowd one final time. I've spent 30 years building something from nothing. I've also spent 30 years watching how people treat those they consider beneath them. His eyes found Eleanor. Tonight, I learned everything I needed to know. Harold Whitmore pushed through the crowd and mounted the stage, his expensive shoes sliding on the polished surface. Marcus, please, can we discuss this privately? My father regarded him with something like pity. Why privately, Harold? Your wife just humiliated my daughter and me in front of 500 people. I think they deserve to hear the rest. The company, if you withdraw your investment, Harold's voice cracked. You'd destroy 40 years of my family's work. Would I? My father tilted his head. Or would your wife's behavior destroy it? I watched Eleanor out of the corner of my eye. She had shrunk somehow, all that Chanel armored confidence crumbling by the second. A 34% stake gives me significant influence on your board, my father continued, his tone almost academic. If I decided to liquidate my position, you'd lose majority control within the week. I understand at least 3 of your competitors have been circling for years. Harold's face went gray. Please, I'm asking you. Man to man. Man to man. My father let the words hang in the air. Interesting. Your wife didn't extend that courtesy to me, did she? Or to my daughter? Silence. But unlike Eleanor, I don't make decisions based on cruelty. My father closed the folder. I won't withdraw my investment. 2,800 Whitmore employees don't deserve to lose their jobs because of one woman's arrogance. Harold sagged with relief. However, the relief vanished. I will be requesting an emergency board meeting Monday morning, 9 a.m. sharp. My father's voice hardened. We're going to discuss whether Eleanor Whitmore's role as your company's brand ambassador is still appropriate. Victoria's phone slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. No one moved to pick it up. Theodore stepped forward with another document. For those unfamiliar with Whitmore Hospitality's corporate structure, Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore holds an unpaid position as brand ambassador. She represents the company at charity events, galas, and media appearances. He adjusted his glasses. According to company bylaws, any shareholder holding more than 30% may motion for a vote on matters related to public representation. Eleanor found her voice. You can't. I'm not an employee. You can't fire me. No one's firing you, my father replied calmly. I'm simply suggesting the board discuss whether a woman who publicly called a guest garbage should be the face of a hospitality company. The irony landed. I saw several guests cover their mouths to hide smiles. After tonight's video goes viral, and it will, do you really think your business partners want Eleanor representing their brand? My father shrugged. That's not revenge. That's common sense. Harold turned to his wife, and for the first time I saw real anger in his eyes. Eleanor, what have you done? I was protecting our family. Her voice rose to a shriek. I was protecting Jonathan from… From what? I stepped forward, surprising myself. From a woman who loved him? From a family that never asked you for anything? Eleanor's mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came. Mrs. Whitmore. My father's voice was quiet now, almost gentle. You're not going to lose your house. You're not going to lose your money or your husband or your children. You're only going to lose the one thing you value most. He paused. Your reputation. Eleanor Whitmore crumpled into the nearest chair, and for the first time in 18 months, she had absolutely nothing to say. Jonathan pushed through the frozen crowd and dropped to his knees in front of me. Daisy, please. His face was wet with tears. I didn't know about any of this. I swear if I'd known your father was… Was what, Jonathan? I looked down at him and felt nothing. Rich? Powerful? Worthy of your respect? That's not what I… Yes, it is. I stepped back from his reaching hands. You watched your mother call my father garbage. You laughed. And now, only now, when you've discovered he could buy and sell your family, you're on your knees. I love you. I've always loved you. You loved the version of me that made you feel generous, the poor girl from Dorchester who should be grateful for your attention. I shook my head. But you never loved me enough to defend me. Or my father. Not once in 18 months. I'll change. I'll do anything. You had your chance. I bent down until we were eye to eye. 3 hours ago, at the church, you promised to love and honor and protect me. 3 hours, Jonathan. That's how long your vows lasted. I straightened up and held out my hand. The ring sat in his palm like an accusation. Keep it. Give it to whoever you marry next. Just make sure she knows the truth about the Whitmore family. I turned my back on him. I turned my back on the $45,000 dress and the penthouse promise and the life I'd almost sold my soul for. My father was waiting at the edge of the stage. He offered me his hand, the same calloused hand that had held mine through everything. I took it. And together, we walked out of the Whitmore Grand Ballroom. Okay, pause for a second. If you think Jonathan got exactly what he deserved, drop a thumbs down emoji in the comments. And if you think Daisy should have given him another chance, well, let me know that too. I want to hear what you think. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Because the fallout from this night, it changed Boston society forever. Stick around. 48 hours later, the internet exploded. Victoria's video, the one she'd been so proudly recording, leaked to Twitter on June 16th at 2:47 p.m. By midnight, it had 2 million views. By Monday morning, 3.4 million. The hashtag Whitmore Wedding Disaster trended #1 in Boston for 16 hours. #8 nationally. Entertainment sites ran it as breaking news. TMZ, Page 6, Business Insider. Old money nightmare. Billionaire father humiliated at daughter's wedding, then revealed he owns the family's company. The comments were savage. Eleanor Whitmore is the poster child for everything wrong with old money. Marcus Frost said, I don't make decisions based on cruelty and then destroyed her anyway, icon. Daisy dropping that ring is the most satisfying thing I've ever seen. Victoria was really filming her own family's destruction. You can't write this. Whitmore Hospitality Group stock dropped 4.7% when markets opened Monday morning. 3 pending partnership deals were postponed indefinitely. The company's PR team issued a statement calling Eleanor's remarks deeply regrettable personal opinions that do not reflect company values. It didn't help. Boston Globe Society page ran a full feature. Whitmore family drama: how a secret billionaire became the hero of Boston's most expensive failed wedding. The article included photos from the event, quotes from anonymous guests, and a detailed breakdown of Frost Capital Partners holdings. My father's 30-year secret was officially over. But the most shared line came from my father himself, captured clearly in Victoria's video. I've spent 30 years watching how people treat those they consider beneath them. Tonight, I learned everything I needed to know. 147,000 retweets, and counting. June 17, 2024, 9:00 a.m., Whitmore Tower, 42nd floor. My father sat at the head of the conference table, a position typically reserved for Harold, while Theodore distributed copies of the motion. I know this because Theodore told me everything later, every excruciating detail. 7 board members attended. 6 voted to remove Eleanor Whitmore from all company representation, effective immediately. Harold cast the only dissenting vote, and even he had to record a formal statement explaining that his opposition was personal, not professional. The minutes read, Mrs. Whitmore's remarks at the June 15th event directly contradict Whitmore Hospitality Group's commitment to treating all individuals with dignity and respect. Her continued association poses unacceptable reputational risk. Eleanor wasn't present. She wasn't invited. But that was just the beginning. Within 2 weeks, she received polite but firm letters from 2 of the 3 charity boards she'd served on for over a decade. Boston Women's League, the Harbor Children's Fund. Both cited shifting organizational priorities and thanked her for her years of service. She knew what it meant. Everyone knew. Victoria's Instagram account hemorrhaged followers, 127,000 in 7 days. Her management company quietly terminated their contract. 4 sponsorship deals evaporated overnight, including her most lucrative partnership with a luxury skincare brand. And Jonathan? He was reassigned from Vice President of Operations to Special Projects Coordinator at the company's smallest property, a 32-room hotel in rural Montana. A demotion so thorough it made the business pages. When I heard the news, I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a quiet certainty that consequences had finally arrived for people who'd spent their whole lives believing they were immune. 3 days after the wedding that wasn't, I sat in my father's kitchen in Dorchester. The same tiny kitchen where I'd eaten cereal before school. The same chipped formica table where I'd done homework while Dad made dinner. Nothing about the space suggested its owner was worth billions. I don't understand. I wrapped my hands around a mug of coffee. You could have lived anywhere, done anything. Why, this? Dad sat across from me, looking older than I'd ever seen him. When your mother died, I had a choice to make. I could raise you surrounded by money and privilege, or I could raise you to understand what really matters. But 28 years, Dad. 28 years of keeping this secret. I wanted you to be self-made, Daisy. I wanted you to earn your success, not inherit it. He reached across the table and took my hand. And I wanted you to find someone who loved you for you, not for my bank account. That worked out great, I said bitterly. Actually, it did. His grip tightened. You were willing to cancel your wedding and walk away from everything the Whitmores represented, when you still believed I had nothing. You chose me. You chose your integrity. I felt tears threatening. I chose you because you're my father. Exactly. His eyes were shining too. And that's worth more than any amount of money, sweetheart. That's the whole point. We sat in silence for a moment. What happens now? I finally asked. Now? Dad smiled, and for the first time since the wedding, it reached his eyes. Now we figure out what you want, not what the Whitmores wanted, not what society expects, just you. I thought about it, and for the first time in 18 months, the answer was easy. 1 week after the wedding, a letter arrived. Handwritten, 3 pages, delivered by a law firm courier. I recognized Eleanor's elegant script before I even opened it. Dear Daisy, I write to express my deepest regret for the words I spoke at your wedding. In my desire to protect my family, I behaved in a way that was unforgivable. I hope in time we might find a path toward reconciliation. I read the whole thing twice. Then I sat down and wrote my response. 2 sentences. Mrs. Whitmore, I accept your apology, but I do not accept you back into my life. I wish you well. My father found me sealing the envelope. You don't want to give her a chance? He asked quietly. I gave her 18 months of chances. I pressed the seal firmly. Dad, boundaries aren't punishment. They're protection. She showed me exactly who she is over and over again. Believing her now would be foolish, not forgiving. He nodded slowly. When did you get so wise? I learned from the best. I smiled at him, even if he kept a few things from me. Some doors close, not from hate, from wisdom. December 2024. 6 months since the night that changed everything. I stood in my new office, 800 square feet in South End, exposed brick, drafting tables by the window, and watched my team finalize the Dorchester Park project. Frost Landscapes and Urban Design. My company. Built with my own business plan, my own bank loan, my own vision. Not a single dollar from my father's billions. Melissa had left her marketing job to become my business manager. 2 junior designers I'd met through professional networks. One office dog named Blueprint, who had more Instagram followers than Victoria now. Our first major contract? A $1.2 million redesign of the public park where I'd played as a child. The same neighborhood Eleanor Whitmore had sneered at. The same community that had shaped me into someone worth knowing. Boston Globe ran a feature in their Sunday magazine. From wedding disaster to urban renewal, how Daisy Frost is redesigning Boston's public spaces. The reporter asked if I regretted canceling my wedding. I regret not doing it sooner, I told her. I spent 18 months trying to prove I belonged in spaces that were never meant for me. Now I'm building my own spaces. That's not revenge, that's growth. The article went viral. Not as viral as the wedding video, but close. And this time the comments were different. Daisy Frost went from being humiliated to being goals. This is the energy I need. She really said, keep your ring. I'll build my own empire. Respect. Marcus Frost raised that girl right. I printed that last one and pinned it above my desk. Some stories don't have endings. They have beginnings. November 2024. My father stepped out of the shadows. After 30 years of anonymity, Marcus Frost held his first ever press conference. Not to brag about his wealth, not to gloat about the Whitmore situation, to announce the Frost Foundation. $200 million dedicated to educational support for children from single-parent households, scholarships, mentorship programs, after-school resources, everything my father had wished existed when he was raising me alone. I know what it's like to be a single parent, he told the assembled reporters. I know the sacrifices, the fear, the constant worry that you're not enough. He paused. I had resources most people don't. It's time to share them. The announcement made national news, the New York Times, NPR, CNN. In January 2025, the Boston Charity Council named him Philanthropist of the Year. I sat in the front row as he accepted the award, dressed in the same kind of simple suit he'd always worn. No designer labels, no flashy accessories. Just Marcus Frost, being exactly who he'd always been. My daughter taught me something important, he said from the podium, catching my eye. She taught me that integrity isn't about what you do when people are watching. It's about who you are when you think no one will ever know. He smiled at me. I spent 30 years hiding my success because I wanted her to understand that lesson. I think she does. The audience applauded. I cried. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought about Eleanor Whitmore. I'd heard she applied to volunteer for the Frost Foundation. Her application was declined. Not aligned with our core values, the rejection letter read. My father hadn't signed it. He hadn't needed to. December 2024. My phone rang with a Montana area code. I almost didn't answer. Daisy? Jonathan's voice was quieter than I remembered, smaller. I know I don't have any right to call. I needed to say something. I walked to my office window watching snow fall on South End. I'm listening? I was a coward, at the wedding and every day before it. You deserved someone who would stand up for you, and I was too afraid of my own family to be that person. Yes, you were. A long pause. Are you happy? He finally asked. I mean, really happy? I looked around my office, at the blueprints on my desk, at Blueprint sleeping in his bed by the radiator, at the life I'd built with my own hands. I'm building something, Jonathan. Happiness, purpose, meaning, all of it, day by day. I'm glad. His voice cracked slightly. I really am. I didn't hate him. I'd stopped hating him months ago, but I also didn't have space for him anymore. Goodbye, Jonathan. I hung up before he could respond. Some chapters end with a period, not an ellipsis. This was mine. December 25th, 2024. Dorchester. The same apartment, the same kitchen table, the same man who had raised me. Turkey, mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie. My mother's recipes, recreated from memory and love. A table set for two, because that was all we needed. Dad poured wine into mismatched glasses. The fancy ones had never made it into our lives, and raised his. To the first Christmas in 28 years where I don't have to hide anything from you. I clinked my glass against his. To the first Christmas in 2 years where I'm not dreading dinner with people who hate me. We laughed. It felt good. Clean. Any regrets? Dad asked, cutting into his turkey. About any of it? I thought about the question, really thought. I regret not telling you how they treated me sooner. I regret trying so hard to fit somewhere I was never wanted. I set down my fork. But canceling the wedding? Walking away from everything they offered? Not 1 second. Dad nodded. You know what I'm proudest of? It's not the company. Not the foundation. Not even the look on Eleanor Whitmore's face. What then? The moment you stood up. His eyes glistened. Before you knew anything about who I was or what I had. You stood up because it was right. That's worth more than everything I've built. I reached across the table and took his hand. You taught me that, Dad, even when you weren't saying it out loud. We finished dinner in comfortable silence. People ask me what I inherited from my father. They expect me to talk about money, about companies, about the billions that will someday be mine. But here's the truth. My real inheritance came on a June night when I stood up and said no. That's worth more than any dollar amount, and it's something no one can ever take away. Thank you for staying until the end of this story. If it resonated with you, if you've ever had to choose between peace and self-respect, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe and hit that bell so you never miss another story. And if you're hungry for more, check out the video linked in the description below. It might just change how you see everything. See you in the next one.